Axe.
I used to love playing this hero as a kid, mainly because I found the Fel Orc Warcraft 3 model so badass. Axe is your typical tanky blink initiator who brings a bit of lane pressure to the table. His innate means he gets free armor for getting kills. He has to be the one to get the kill though, as he doesn't get anything from an assist, but that's fine because of a spell we'll get to later. His Q is Berserker's Call. Press it to have Axe shout a hot take, and then every enemy within a short radius around him will be forced to hit him. Axe also gets bonus armor for the taunt duration. The call out facet increases Axe's bonus armor and gives taunted enemies more attack speed. It's pretty good on its own, but you will want to consider the one-man army facet that gives him increased strength based on his armor as long as there's no nearby teammate. This lingers for a bit when a teammate walks nearby. Anyway, Call's radius is pretty small, so you want to get a blink dagger to help you get into a good position. Battle Hunger is where some of his lane pressure comes from. It's a debuff, and its current iteration slows the target if they're running from Axe, and it deals more damage based on Axe's armor. Enemies can dispel the debuff by killing a unit, either enemy or ally. Typically, you'll want to throw this on your enemy support during the laning phase because they're usually not going to be taking last hits, so they get the full duration of the debuff. Do not sleep on this spell. It deals great damage early on and can lead to a few early game kills. Shard causes Call to apply Battle Hunger to affected enemies and allows you to place multiple instances on a single target. I want to like it, but you usually want to get other items instead. Call forces people to hit him and he hits back with counter helix, his E and passive. After taking a set number of attacks, Axe spins and deals pure damage to surrounding enemies. This makes him really strong against melee carries in lane, especially ones with naturally high attack speed and or illusions. Note that this has a bit of a cooldown, and this is removed with Scepter while also making his spin apply a stacking debuff to enemies that lowers their damage. Axe also makes his attacks count toward the counter. It's pretty good, get it after your core items. And finally, his ultimate is Culling Blade. It deals pure damage to a single target, and if you use it as a finisher, the cooldown is reset and you give yourself and nearby teammates a move speed and armor buff. You also get 3 times the amount of armor from your passive when getting a culling kill. If you're a league player, think of it as Darius ult. That's pretty much what this is. It's really hyped to get multiple kills with this in a single fight, and it's a great excuse to steal kills. For talents, I find the Culling Blade speed to be really fun, so get that at 10. Most people get counter helix damage, but I think the Battle Hunger slow is the better choice at 15. Culling Blade damage at 20 is a must because it helps you secure your dunk, and Call AoE at 25. Common misconception, Axe's job is not to deal damage. Yes, you do hurt, but you're a controller first and foremost. You're supposed to frontline for your team and take pressure off your backliners. When your team falls up and you're engaged, then you can steal their kills with your dunk and gain some of that sweet free armor. Pick Axe as a counter to certain melee carries. He absolutely destroys Troll Warlord, Phantom Assassin, Anti-Mage, and any illusion carries because they tend to be weaker in the laning phase. He's also the only hero in the game that can kill a unit through Dazzle's Shallow Grave, so he's also a good counter pick against him. He's mainly an armor stacker, so he doesn't particularly do well against casters. Leshrac and Timbersaw can chew through Axe's HP bar while ignoring his high armor, but I think his hardest counter is OD. His orb completely ignores resistances, and he can banish you or your call targets as a save. If you want to play Axe, ban OD every game. Trust me, he is not fun to fight. Pick Axe if your team needs someone to frontline and start fights. He's a classic and everybody kinda knows how he works. Buy Blink, buy Blade Mail, and spin to fucking win. Let's go to the next hero.
Beastmaster.
Personally, one of my picks for the title of daddiest hero in the game. Look at those washboard abs. Look at that beard. He's even good with pets. If I were into men and see this guy on Hinge or something, I'd swipe right. Anyway, his innate is Inner Beast. He gives himself and any unit he controls around him bonus attack speed. The Beast Mode facet lets him pop Inner Beast to give himself attack speed buff and deal more damage, while the Wild Hunt facet increases the bonus attack speed per nearby controlled unit. Beast Mode is probably better in most cases, but at least Wild Hunt is one of the best RPGs of all time, and you should play it if you haven't already. Wild Axes is his main damage tool. He yeets his hatchets in an arc to deal damage and apply a stacking debuff to enemies the axes hit. Enemies can get hit twice by this ability per cast. The debuff also gets refreshed and increases in stacks if hit by another cast of Wild Axes. This debuff increases the amount of damage targets take from Beastmaster and units he controls. Beastmaster can summon a boar and a hawk. The boar can be controlled and deals range damage and applies a slow to enemy move and attack speed, while the hawk orbits around Beastmaster and slams into enemies momentarily to root them. With Shard, Beast gets another hawk per cast and reduces the cooldown of the summon. The more attack speed the hawks have, the more often they'll Aloha Snack Bar. I wish the hawks could damage towers so I could reference a certain event in 2001, but at least they're really good in skirmishes. His ult is Primal Roar, a single target stun that deals damage and pushes nearby enemies away from the primary target. The push targets are applied as slow to their move and attack speed. Beastmaster also gets a bit of a move speed buff after using this ability. It's great in a team fight and allows you to isolate a target to move in with your army. His Scepter upgrade is really weird, but really good. The Drums of Slom. Every attack done by Beastmaster or nearby units under his control give him a stack. Every stack increases the rate at which the drums beat. His roar also gives him a bunch of stacks at once. Every drum beat deals a bit of damage, and Beast and his friends are healed for a portion of the damage dealt. The drums will continue to beat even when he's stunned, so think of it like a damage aura. It's amazing in a team fight, and it's his most popular item even after upgraded boots. It's great for skirmishes, fighting, farming, and pushing. It's a must-have items build at every game. For talents, Wild Axe's damage amp at 10, but the magic resist helps your pet stay alive against AoE casters. The move speed at 15 is nice, 30 damage to Beast and the boys at 20, and Roar cooldown is usually better at 25. Traditionally, Beastmaster has been picked as a pusher in the past when he would melt towers and would join teamfights to contribute his roar. His current iteration is that of a full-on teamfighter. In a 5v5, he roars, he bores, and his axes soar like the hammer of Thor. Pick him if you want to shout and dual-wield axes, and you're not really in the mood to reinstall Skyrim.
Brewmaster!
Also known as Panda. It's a Dota 1 thing, don't think too much about it. Let's start with his first skill, Thunderclap. It deals damage in an AoE and slows move speed and attack speed of affected enemies. On its own, it's nothing to write home about, but that's why you combine it with his second spell. Cinderbrew applies a debuff that slows enemies, but if they take magic or pure damage during the debuff, they are also ignited and take extra damage. Your chosen facet changes how this ability works. Roll Out the Barrel causes him to throw a barrel in a line, applying the debuff to enemies in an AoE, and ending in a big splash. The barrel also deals a bit of impact damage. Drunken Master makes Brew target an AoE, and causes his move speed to fluctuate from somewhat slower to much faster. I recommend Roll Out the Barrel because it's easier to use, but if you have fast hands, Drunken Master can be much better. Casting the spell also buffs your third ability. Drunken Brawler is a stance change ability. If you've played the newer Smash Bros games, think of it like Shulk's Monado powers. Brew can choose between 4 stances: Earth, Storm, Fire, and Void in that order. Each stance gives him passive bonuses. Earth stance gives him armor and magic resistance, Storm gives him evasion and move speed, Fire gives him a crit and attack speed, and Void gives him status resistance and slows on his attacks. Brew can cycle through these stances freely with no cooldown, and when he casts Cinderbrew, the stance bonuses are multiplied for a short period of time. You can get pretty crazy with these stances. You can Storm stance to run into the fight, Cinderbrew and switch to Fire stance to give yourself up to 70% chance to crit, and if you're a god gamer, you can switch to Void or Earth stance to nullify incoming nukes. Most of the time though, you'll want to keep it on either Earth or Storm stance. But that's boring, so I recommend limit testing. His ultimate is Primal Split and turns Brew into 4 elemental Brewlings or Pandas, and each one has a unique skill set. Earth has a point and click stun, a permanent BKB, and deals extra damage to towers. He also carries any aura that Brewmaster has, like Radiance, Vladimir's, or AC. Storm can throw enemies into the air, turn invisible, and he can break the invis to deal more damage, and he can purge buffs and debuffs in an AoE. Fire runs really fast and has permanent phase movement, bonus status resist, and passively burns enemies around him, and Void just kidnaps people. Yeah, they kinda did him dirty. When the duration ends, Brew takes the position of the Earth Panda if it's still alive. If it isn't, it takes the place of Storm, then Fire, then Void. If all pandas are killed during the duration, so is Brew. His shard extends the max duration of this ability and allows Brew to end it early. With Scepter, he gets Primal Companion, giving him a Brewling for him to control. If you know how to micro, it's pretty interesting. If not, you should probably skip it. Fire Panda is good for split pushing, Storm Panda is good for disrupting, Earth Panda is good for stunning and dealing extra damage to towers, and Void Panda is good for just kidnapping people. For talents, Brewling damage at 10, Cinderbrew damage is safer at 15, but Brewed Up is really fun, Brewling health at 20 unless you're going hitter, then take the attack speed, and Fear at 25. Brew's never been the most popular pick in pubs, especially now because he's not very intuitive to use and requires micro. However, he's really fun if you know how to play him. You can build him as an aura stacker, but a lot of brews also build him as a hitter, playing around fire stance and the crazy crit chance that comes with it. Your typical combo is Cinderbrew, Thunderclap, right clicks, and then split just as you're about to die. You want any items to prevent your immediate death or to be able to purge any silences they might have. These are typically Greaves, Manta, Lotus Orb, or whatever. You're universal, so it doesn't really matter what you choose to build. Your main counters are silences or people who can easily kill your pandas through raw damage. He's a pretty strong team fighter and reminds me of my creepy uncle because he smells, is probably drunk, and is coming with his friends to Thunderclap those cheeks.
Bristleback!
Probably one of the biggest losers of the Facet patch. Bristleback is just not the threat he once was, and people are still learning how to play this new version of him. His innate is his ultimate, Warpath, which gives him a stack every time he casts a spell. With every stack, he gains increased damage and move speed. Berserk trades most of that damage for some extra attack speed instead, which honestly isn't what you want as BB. His first spell is his Goo. It's a point and click stacking debuff that reduces enemy move speed and armor. Snot Rocket increases the gravity of the debuff while also boosting the stack limit. His second spell, Quill Spray, is his bread and butter. He shoots quills around him and they apply a stacking debuff that causes subsequent casts to deal increased damage. This ability is why BBs can very easily wipe entire teams. His third ability is Bristleback. He takes decreased damage from his back and sides. This is straight up damage reduction, so this is separate from armor and magic resistance. Upon reaching a damage threshold from the rear, he passively releases a a quill spray. Unless he has Snot Rocket for a facet, and then he releases a goo cast around him instead. Shard gives him Hairball, he shoots out a ball that releases a quill spray and goo stacks in an area. Scepter gives the Bristleback passive an active, allowing him to shoot a bunch of quill sprays in a target direction in quick succession. It looks memey, but it's actually quite good. It gives him an easy way to get stacks and forces enemies to attack his back. For talents, attack speed at 10, goo range at 15 is incredibly underrated. You're tanky enough to the point where you don't need the other one, but this one will help you keep your warpath stacks up. Health regen at 20 is usually better, and then spell lifesteal at 25, but the other one may be better if you go Snot Rocket. Your role in a fight is to run around and spam quills and grew while throwing in right clicks. You are most dangerous when you are dead center of the engagement. The enemy doesn't want to go on you because you're so tanky and you hit back with quills, but if they don't, you're gonna be a ticking time bomb with all your bristle stacks. Your choice of facet largely depends on how you want to play. Berserk is the better choice if you want to play a traditional Bristleback, building tankiness and spell lifesteal, but don't sleep on Snot Rocket if your team comp calls for it. In its current state at max stacks, it is the best armor debuff in the game, besides maybe Elder Titan's passive and facet. It's more armor reduction than Slardar's ultimate at max level with a talent investment, potentially on an entire team. Definitely something worth considering if you're on a heavy physical comp. Anyway, unless you're going to full send, you do not want to use your spells in lane. You are good in extended engagements, not short trades. You would also be giving your enemy wand charges, which is not what you want to be doing. BB is a great pick if your team needs damage and has crowd control already covered. However, there are a few picks that ruin his day. Hoodwink and Viper can break Bristle's back with their ultimates, Legion forces BB to face forward and take the full damage, and Slark doesn't mind your tankiness, he just steals your stats. While I personally like playing this hero, I'm glad to see him ride the bench for a bit. He was in the spotlight for way too long and deserves to take a break.
Broodmother.
I'm listing her as an offlaner because of her long history in the role, but she can realistically play any of the core positions. In fact, right now she's one of the best carries of the current meta. Let's begin with her ultimate, Spawn Spiderlings. She sends out a nuke that damages and slows enemies. If they die during the slow debuff or if the projectile kills them outright, they spawn baby spiders. These spiders apply a weak slow with their attacks, and when they kill an enemy, they spawn an additional baby spider. This, combined with frequent casts of Spawn, means she can amass a huge army. To mobilize that army, she gets Spin Web. Brute shoots a web in an area, giving her and her spiderlings bonuses while within it. This ability functions on a charge basis, and she can only ever have a set amount of them out at a single time, but she and all of her babies become substantially stronger within the web. They get a move speed buff, but that is only secondary to the fact that you get free pathing and can completely ignore terrain and unit collision within the web. She can connect webs to give her and her army a zone where she completely ignores one of the most fundamental rules of Dota. Oh, and she has a facet that makes enemies have reduced regen within webs. This makes her good at trading in lane, but it's also really good against heroes that rely on sustain. Speaking of sustain, she also has her passive, Spider's Milk. With every kill on an enemy unit, she heals herself and all nearby units under her control. This means her self-healing is pretty nuts when you consider she zips around from camp to camp, then back to lane really fast. In combat, she's no slouch either. Insatiable Hunger is a powerful steroid that gives her bonus damage and lifesteal, while her incapacitating Bite passive makes her strikes apply a debuff that partially blinds targets, slows them, and makes them take increased damage from attacks. Feeding Frenzy also makes her steroid apply to nearby spiderlings too, and Shard makes this effect last longer while also making it ramp up in damage. Scepter gives her Snare, which let her set up a number of traps anywhere on her webs. Enemies that walk into the snare take damage, are rooted, revealed in fog, and ping for your team to see. It's a good CC tool against enemies who think they can run away. For talents, the webs are really useful at 10, web restore time at 15 is also a huge quality of life boon, attack speed at 20, and lower hunger bat at 25. I don't particularly recommend Brood for new players, but if you want to play Itsy Bitsy over here, you gotta play her as a snowballer. The hero farms as fast as she moves with her spiders, webs, and amazing sustain. Set up webs in your jungle and in your lane of choice and juggle farm between these areas. You get really powerful, really fast, but that makes you peak way earlier than your enemies might. So utilize your strong timings, make good rotations with your webs, and take towers early to limit your enemies' options. She's horrible against Earthshaker, Axe, and anyone who can easily destroy her army or pressure her out of the game and ruin her timings. That's the basics of Brood, but if you really want to get good with this hero, you should probably watch a dedicated guide or something.
Centaur.
You know how the colloquial term tank just means really durable character, when actual tanks were also meant to deal damage with cannons and stuff? Yeah, Centaur is both. His innate gives him free HP every few minutes. No drawbacks or anything, just free stats, which I'll never say no to. His horsepower innate gives him bonus move speed based on his strength. This gets really good over the course of the game. His stomp is his CC tool. It deals damage, stuns in an area, and can be wound up while moving. Double edge is his nuke. It damages both the target enemy and himself, as well as any opponent near the original target. It deals additional damage based on his strength and has a pretty short cooldown. The counter strike facet makes double edge deal extra damage based on how much he recently took from enemy heroes. His shard makes the spell apply a slow and boosts his strength based on the number of heroes hit. Retaliate makes enemies who hit Centaur with an attack take some damage back, scaling off of his strength. Stampede makes all allied heroes and their controlled units become hasted, and if they ram into an enemy hero, the enemy is also slowed and takes damage based on Centaur's strength. Scepter lets Centaur spawn a cart behind him, giving him the benefits of Stampede. He can also throw a teammate into the cart, rendering them untargetable and unable to move freely, but they can still attack, cast spells, and use items. It has its uses, but is generally seen as a meme, and I have never seen this ability used in an actual match, and that says a lot considering I only play Turbo these days. For talents, get the regen at 10, extra strength at 15, either one at 20 is good, but I'll go with Stampede cooldown because my carry always gets caught out, and Retaliate Aura at 25 is strong, but I can see cases where the stomp duration is better. This hero is so simple, and I love it because Brewmaster took up way too much time in this video. Centaur has the beautifully simple game plan of to just build tanky, stun enemies, ult to start fights, and use W whenever you can. Pick horsepower and just build as much strength as possible. You scale really well into the late game with your amazing strength gain, innate, and through building strength items. Generally, he's a really powerful offlaner, good against melee carries in lane, and range carries later on because he can get on top of them with Stampede. He is, however, heavily countered by sustained damage and resistance reduction. Heroes like Slardar, Dazzle, and Elder Titans reduce your armor so much that your HP bar might melt really fast despite its incredible girth. Lifestealer is also a classic counter because you do nothing against BKB targets and he deals damage based on your health. If you're learning offlane or Dota in general, Centaur is a great place to start.
Dark Seer.
This Giga Chad Stardew Valley urchin looking motherfucker punches enemies and gains intelligence by going to the gym. His innate means that his intelligence can never be lower than his strength or agility. If an item or buff gives him extra of either of these stats, he gets free intelligence to ensure that they're equal. This means you not only get free intelligence by building strength on him, but because he is a universal hero, you also get free damage. And with a quick wit facet, you also get attack speed from your intelligence, which you can also get from your strength. Dude, forget Centaur, maybe we should be stacking strength on Darkseer instead. As far as quick wit is though, you're not really going to be building Darkseer as a right clicker, so the Heart of Battle facet may be better in most cases. This means you move faster the more heroes around you, both enemies and allied. His first spell is Vacuum. He pulls enemies in an AoE to a target area. This is an amazing spell in a coordinated setting and great for setting up big stuns and the like. It also interrupts channeling spells and TPs, so you want to hold it in case enemies try to get cheeky. Ion Shell is his damage tool and what makes him such a strong laner against melee carries. He puts a shell on a target unit and the shell constantly damages enemies nearby said unit. With this, he pushes waves really fast and makes it nearly impossible for melee carries to farm without taking damage in the laning stage. Surge is a targeted buff. Click on a teammate or yourself, giving haste and phase movement for a short period of time. Shard lets this ability create a trail that slows and damages enemies in said trail. It's kind of similar to Singed from League, but it's not a really high priority shard. His ultimate Wall of Replica is really strong though. He places a wall in an area and enemy heroes passing through the wall take a bit of chip and are slowed, but the wall also spawns a replica that deals a portion of the enemy's base damage. Get 3 or more enemies to pass through the wall, which isn't too hard to do with Vacuum, and you have a chaotic team fight on your hands. And now we get to what very well could be my favorite ability in the entire game, Darkseer's Aghanim's upgrade, Normal Punch. Darkseer winds up a punch that deals extra damage on his next auto to a target enemy hero, based on his recent distance traveled, but the punch also knocks the enemy back, stuns them, and creates an illusion of the punch target. I have so many questions about this spell. Why is it called Normal Punch when there's nothing normal about it? Why is it on Darkseer of all heroes? Why does it create Japanese text when it's used? I'm not saying it's bad, it's actually really good. I'm just flabbergasted as to what Ice Frog was smoking when he pulled this spell out of his beautiful ass crack, and what divine intervention compelled him to put it on Purple Patrick, star of all heroes. This ability is really fun, it makes quick wit worth it, and you want to get Ags every game. For talent, replica damage at 10 is insane for such an early talent. It scales really well into the late game. Get this always. Ion Shell health is nice, but the Vacuum AoE just feels so good in a team fight, so get that 15. Wall cooldown is usually safer at 20, but I can see the argument that Wall comes back often enough that Ion Shell damage is better, and AoE surge at 25. You can surge creep waves, slap an Ion Shell on one of the melees, and mess with the equilibrium really well with his talent. Darkseer is an amazing team fighter. What he lacks in burst damage and CC, he makes up for in general utility. All of his abilities are incredibly unique and come in handy in a variety of situations. For this reason, he has a lot of synergies. You can slap an Ion Shell on an Invis hero like Bounty Hunter and make them wonder where their HP bar is. Vacuum is amazing when paired with other heroes for wombo combo opportunities, like Disruptor's Kinetic Field into Static Storm. Surge and Ion Shell are great for every melee carry in the game. Just slap them on your Ursa, Sven, or Lifestealer and watch them fuck shit up. He does have his fair share of counters though. He doesn't fare particularly well against burst damage, and dispels from Oracle can ruin his day. He doesn't have a real escape besides running really fast with Shard, so heroes who can keep up with him like Weaver, Bloodseeker, and Windranger can all cut off his escape route. He doesn't check any of the main boxes in the team comp like damage, stuns, and pushing power, but if all those are already good, Darkseer adds a lot of luxury to a team.
Dawnbreaker!
Dawnbreaker is the embodiment of the sayings thick thighs save lives and is the perfect Dota waifu for players looking for a muscle mommy. Her ultimate, Solar Guardian, allows her to heal teammates globally while also coming to their rescue. Upon being cast near a teammate, Dawn creates a zone where enemies take damage and allies are healed, and after a brief delay, Dawn shows up to damage and stun enemies upon landing. Scepter allows Dawn to move the zone, increase the healing, make the zone give evasion, and reduce the channel time. That's not the only thing global about her kit, because her innate reveals the entire map for a team every time the game shifts from night to day for a short period of time. That's right, this hero gets literal map hacks as part of her base kit. Moving on to her abilities, Starbreaker is her Q. She swings her hammer twice and slams it down, stunning enemies in the AoE. The ability scales off of her damage, but it does add extra damage to her swings. The targeting is kind of finicky, so you're gonna have to try it for yourself to get used to it. Also, if she gets stunned during the combo, it gets cancelled. Shard gives her debuff immunity during Starbreaker and unlocks her movement to help her land it more consistently. Her abilities combo really well with her passive, Luminosity. You know how League loves the 3-hit passive? Dota loves the 4-hit passive. Isn't that right, Monkey King and Slardar? Wait, fuck off Abaddon, you're not on the club anymore. Anyway, with Luminosity, Dawn's 4th attack is always a crit, and she and her teammates are healed whenever Luminosity procs. Celestial Hammer is her mobility tool. She throws out a hammer, dealing damage to enemies it hits, and after a short period of time, it flies back to Dawn, creating a trail of fire along its return path that damages and slows enemies. Dawn can also recast this ability to meet the hammer in the middle, giving her surprising amounts of mobility. Gleaming Hammer lets the hammer remain stationary for even longer, while also causing a weaker healing / damage effect of Dawn's ult around the hammer. For talents, Starbreaker damage at 10 is generally better. Honestly, both 15 talents are pretty good, but I'm gonna go with Luminosity crit because that's better than Daedalus crit, and you're guaranteed to proc it every 4 hits. Donald cooldown is still pretty good though. Luminosity hits at 20, and Starbreaker cooldown at 25. This hero deals a lot of fucking damage and has a little bit of crowd control to boot. I have been absolutely decimated by Dawnbreakers in the past because she brawls incredibly well. She shines brightest in extended engagements, but that comes at the cost of everything in her kit feeling slow. Her Starbreaker stun, dash, and her crit all have a delay, and even her ult has a channel. She handles like a Pacific Rim Jaeger because of the pace of her abilities, but goddamn does she hurt. Your plan is simple: win lane if you can and farm in scale. Later on in the game, you don't have to join your team when they group up because you can Solar Guardian to them anyway. Like a good neighbor, Dawnbreaker's there. The power of her kit means that none of her teammates are ever really alone because of her ultimate, so she functions really well against gankers and heroes that rely on getting solo picks. Except Nyx Assassin, he completely ruins Dawn's game plan, and Silencer too. Historically, this hero's been a mid laner for the longest time, but now she's also a pretty good offlaner too. DP is a tanky, sustained damage mage that relies on her self-sustain and high HP to keep herself going in a fight. She's a scaling mage, and that aspect is hammered home by her innate, which gives her move speed and spell cooldown reduction every level. Crypt Swarm is her first spell. It is a wave nuke that deals damage, and that's it. It has a short cooldown and it gets shorter with more levels thanks to the innate. Silence is, you guessed it, a silence, but in an AoE. The suppress facet slows targets who are silenced, and I kinda like it. It gives DP a bit of control, which is kind of lacking in her kit. Spirit Siphon is her damage and sustain tool. Like Pugna, she gives a target the good old suck, draining their HP.
You gotta give him that huck too and spit on that thing.
Unlike Pugna's Gok Gok though, DP can move and act freely during the duration. This ability functions on a charge basis, and DP can suck multiple targets at once because she's freaky like that. Shard increases the numbers of charges and makes enemy run away in fear if they've been Gok Gok for too long because ain't nobody gonna match her freak. Her ultimate Exorcism causes death prompt to summon the girlies for a night out. The girlies flock to nearby enemy units and structures, dealing damage. At the end of the spell's duration, the girlies return to DP to heal her based on the damage dealt, and she also moves faster during the spell's duration. Use it in a team fight or if you really want to take down a tower. The heal at the end is really powerful, and this ability deals serious damage on its own, so you'll want to itemize to stay alive rather than to maximize your damage output. The Spirit Collector facet lets DP collect the souls of fallen heroes, which includes enemies and allies, replacing one of the ghost girls in her next exorcism cast with the spirit of that hero. This hero spirit deals extra damage. This also means any nearby hero that dies during exo will replace a ghost girl for the rest of the duration. This one's also pretty good, but I prefer having a little bit of extra control from the other facet. Scepter causes her attacks and spells to launch a ghost girly, dealing damage, slowing, and giving her back some HP based on the damage. It's a good upgrade and gives her a bit more power outside of her ultimate. For talents, take the magic res at 10 if you want to tank up, but it's not required against teams that don't have a lot of magic damage dealers. The attack speed is also really nice to have since it boosts your farming and helps you out if you're considering Ags. Get the health at 15 to help you tank up even more, suck damage at 20, and more ghost at 25. Before, people just viewed DP as a walking ultimate. Now, Spirit Siphon makes her a huge threat even without her girl squad. Even though she's a ranged hero with a good attack range, her spells encourage her to get close to the enemy. Playing close range, it's harder to break the Siphon and her spirits can get more hits in, but you don't want to overestimate your tankiness. You kind of want to be close to your enemies, but not melee range kind of close. Her worst enemy is crowd control. DP wants to run around casting her spells in a team fight. Silences and slows kind of put a damper on that. Since she's more of a sustained tank, she gets countered by anti-heal rather than sustained damage. Pick Death Prophet if your team needs teamfight damage and a bit of pushing power. If you have a personal vendetta against anyone on the enemy team, you pick this guy. His ultimate, Doom, is a fat middle finger in the face of one guy in particular. It's a long debuff that silences a target, deals damage, and prevents them from gaining health from heals or regen, much like AA's Ice Blast. It also dispels buffs on cast. Using the spell on an enemy hero early in an engagement pretty much tells them they're not allowed to play the game and takes them out of the fight. They can still use items though, so they're not entirely useless in that regard. Scepter makes Doom affect enemies in an area around the primary target, and it also lets Doom target himself, allowing him to keep someone doomed as long as he's on top of them. It's not the best strategy considering force saves are a thing, but it's worth mentioning. While good, his ultimate isn't the only thing he has in his bag of tricks. His innate means his attacks deal extra damage to enemies who are lower level than him. And he does have the Devil's Bargain facet, which lets you sell your items at 90% of the value at the cost of having a 15% buyback cost penalty. There are niche cases where this is good, like if you want to sell an early game item like a bracer or wand, but a costlier buyback could come back to haunt you in a game where buyback is just so important. You're also giving up the other facet, which I'll get to in a bit, which is a really good upgrade. Devour lets him eat a creep, and if said creep has an ability, Doom gains it for himself to use. Use it on a neutral creep of your choice to get things like the Hill Troll Net or the Centaur Stomp for a stun. Because you don't have a lot of mana, you can also just grab an aura and call it a day. Another aspect to this ability is that it gives you bonus gold after you digest the creep, which is really nice to have. Make sure the spell is always on cooldown to maximize the gold you get from it. The Gluttony facet gives you 2 charges of Devour, meaning more gold, and increases the power of your Devoured creep's abilities. The facet is just a lot more straightforward. I recommend this for players who don't know what they're doing just yet. Scorched Earth is his mobility tool and damage tool. It gives him bonus move speed. It also gives him a damaging aura for the duration. It's great in a team fight and for chasing down foes. Shard heals him and any units he controls for a portion of the damage dealt. With this spell, he can also move pretty fast. After pressing W, Doom doesn't just go zoom, he goes dump. Infernal Blade is an empowered auto. It stuns a target briefly while also dealing max % HP damage. It deals a lot of damage, but you sometimes want to hold it to cancel TPs because smarter players will try to teleport out if they've been doomed. For talents, Scorch damage at 10 helps a lot, but get the magic resist against magic heavy comps. Scorch move speed at 15, Scorch cooldown at 20, and 25 depends on the game. If the team has like a Bristleback or something, take the break, otherwise always take the mute. Doom's contribution to a team are a lot more understated and subtle than someone like Centaur or Dark Seer. And I'm not just saying that because Scorched Earth visual animation is hard to see. Doom brings jungle auras from Devour into a regular team comp. He also brings not just his ult, but the threat of it, which forces enemies to play much safer and itemize defensively. There are 2 ways to play Doom, either Octarine Refresher Ags to be an ult bot or aura stack with items like Lotus Orb and Pipe. Because of his free gold mechanic and the fact that all the damage you'll ever need comes from Scorched Earth and Infernal Blade, Doom's a lot like Bounty Hunter who can build whatever he wants and makes it work. A good rule of thumb is that if the enemy lineup has 2 or more priority Doom targets, go for the ult build, otherwise aura stack and tank up and play with your team. That being said, Doom shines best as a counterpick against sustained heroes like Necrophos, Huskar, and Alchemist. For counters, avoid picking Doom into situations where you're dealing with multiple targets. Illusion heroes like PL get a mention because Doom has an abysmal mana pool, meaning he also gets screwed over by Defeasal Blade.
Dragon Knight.
The most boring, uninteresting character that I have ever played in a MOBA game. Point and click stun, point and click nuke, right clicks, and be very tanky. That's pretty much DK's entire gameplay loop. Anyway, this hero pretty much plays himself. He's a flex pick who can also be played as a mid laner. If you didn't already know, his main gimmick is that he's just a dude with a sword, but he can turn into a dragon with his ultimate to become a ranged hero. The dragon moves faster and it has extra attack damage, and its colors and attacks change based on DK's chosen facet, which also affects his third ability, Worm's Wrath. Red makes his normal attacks cleave, and when he becomes a dragon, his attacks deal splash damage. Green makes his normal attacks reduce armor and deal damage over time. This effect is stronger when he's a dragon and if splashes in an area, but his attack damage doesn't. This also affects buildings. Blue makes his attack slow and reduce healing effects. Like green, it's stronger dragon form and the effect splashes to nearby units. Scepter turns his dragon into a black one, upgrading the damage, move speed, and facet bonus, while also letting him ignore terrain. It's not mentioned here, but it's good to know. In case you didn't already know, free pathing is one of the most busted things in Dota. And his innate dragon's blood gives him bonus armor and regen passively, which is multiplied when he's a dragon. Green is great for pushing, tanking, blue is great for fighting, and red is great for scaling to become a damage dealer. None of them are horrible on their own, so it's up to you what you want to get. Generally, go green though, because tower damage is relatively harder to come by than AoE damage and slows. Breathe Fire is one of the most creatively named abilities in the game. He just spits hot fire that deals damage and reduces the attack damage of enemy heroes hit. Dragon's Tail is his stun. It's a point and click, single target stun. It's melee in man form and ranged in dragon form. And for Shard, he has Fireball. Click on an AoE and anyone who stands there just takes a bunch of damage over time. For talent, damage at 10 is usually the best choice. The health is nice, but if you need a lockdown, take the stun at 15. Dragon form range is really nice at 20. You always want to be hitting and the range helps with that. And regen at 25 is better for the survivability. His kit is straightforward, simple, and honestly kind of boring, but he gets the job done. He's a well-rounded pick and can flex to mid if needed. His power comes from the fact that he's incredibly hard to zone from the lane because of Dragon's Blood. In the mid lane, he's strong against heroes like Puck and Ember, who can't really bully him out, and in the off lane, he's great at trading against most melee carries, but he is also a bit more susceptible to getting all-in by heroes like Juggernaut and Ursa because of his lack of mobility. He's incredibly tanky, very straightforward, scales pretty well, and is almost never a horrible pick. Don't pick him into Slark or Viper though. Slark will use your tankiness against you and steal your stats and purge your stun if you're not careful, and Viper nullifies your DPS with his corrosive skin. He's no Vhagar or Drogon in terms of destructive power, but he has just enough utility and damage in his kit to at least be somewhat of a threatening dragon. You're pretty much forced to build some sort of damage item though. And that's it for part 1. As always, leave a like if you learned something, comment if you want to say something, and subscribe if you haven't already. Every little bit of engagement helps the channel out and I would really appreciate it. That's all for now. Ace out.